But is that person going to be there, or are we?
We can start whenever.
Yeah.
I can keep all the cameras.
Are you rolling now?
Yeah.
But we'll cut that
Yeah,
out.
I know. I do that too, but I don't like the soft roll. Do you want them to be quiet? They're okay talking.
It's fine, yeah.
Okay. All right.
Well, let's start officially.
Okay.
When you're approaching this project with Edward, do you think that this is the beginning of, or not the beginning, but it's a signal of a consistent relationship that will continue to occur throughout both of your careers now that you've got two in the bank?
It's kind of interesting because we didn't talk about it that way, but as soon as we finished this and we were sort of, sending it out into the world, sending Watermark out into the world, we started sort of getting into this dangerous territory of talking about, so maybe we should do something again. And both Ed and I are trying to take a bit of a sabbatical right now. Maybe not a whole year, but a break, because it's been, I would say this is probably the most intense film that I worked on, especially in editing, because trying to find a way of interweaving 20 different threads that could not be traditionally narrative, like they couldn't have a narrative arc because there were too many of them, it was intense. So I'm tired, but I also think that it's a pretty rich relationship, and I think there are points of contact in the way that Ed and Nick and I work, and so one of the reasons that he was drawn to our work before Manufactured Landscapes, and one of the reasons that we were drawn to his photographs, is because we inhabit that same non-didactic place, I think, in our work. And so bringing those two together, it was really, it was unexpectedly sort of resonant with Manufactured Landscapes. We didn't expect it would have the response that it did. And in this case, we were more, in Watermark, we were more aware of that as a very deliberate approach to the vastness of the subject.
And each time there's a kind of multimedia component, because obviously you have the photographs that are taken, you have the books that are published. This time you have the installations that you've made in addition to it. Like, is it the type of thing where you shoot so much, you have so much material that it's going to continue to grow in a multimedia way?
I think there will be more lives of this, iterations of this project, simply because we live in that world now where those threads are much more possible and indeed kind of necessary in terms of getting it out there. I think that in terms of, for Ed, it's probably the body of work that is the strongest part. And for us, the strongest part is the film. But the fact that they all kind of inform each other is really nice. That didn't happen with Manufactured Landscapes. The book came out, the China book came out at around the same time, but it wasn't, Ed had already done most of his shooting in Manufactured Landscapes by the time we went to China with him. That was his last trip. Whereas in this case, he had only just begun this project. So we really went on that journey together, and were able to plan a bit more in terms of releasing things at the same time.
What was the nitty-gritty of co-directing this time around? Like, how did you kind of divide those, or was it more organic?
It was pretty organic. I mean, we didn't, it's funny because we talked about it a bit at the beginning, and I said, okay, Ed, you've got two options. Well, three options. One is that you do a film yourself, and I can mentor you and just give you advice through the process, and so we can talk about it, and that will be one way of making a foray into film. And then the other way of doing it is I guess there are only two ways. If we are going to do it together, we're going on a journey together, and this is our way of working, which you've witnessed, but you know, we don't write a script beforehand. It's the treatment is philosophically durable, like there's thematically, but it's not prescriptive. So it's more the product of a lot of research, and that then creates a kind of an outline to say these are the things that we're interested in pursuing. And then the story is made by having the right attitude when you're shooting and when you're on location, a kind of openness to the reality of where you are, and an ability to be somewhere authentically without disturbing that place too much, and also to convey that to a viewer, which is a real like minute by minute kind of thing sometimes. It really is about an existential attitude about where you are. And then the heavy lifting happens in editing in terms of putting the story together. And so I said, if you want to do that together, that would be great, but it's a different process, and you'll have to submit to a certain extent. And he said he really wanted to do that. So what ended up happening in production, it was really interesting because we just naturally moved into areas of strength in a way. And when you look at Ed's photographs, and I mean, I've said this before, but it's sometimes not obvious where to stand when you get to some of these places. In fact, in all of these places, it's not obvious. It's not like there's one place you go, well, that's it. That's the place that's going to convey the scale of this context, or this is the vantage point. And Ed has this uncanny ability to find that place and to know how to convey that. But that wide view is only one part of the film. And we knew from the very beginning, and I knew, that in order for that level to work, there had to be detail. So we had to move back and forth constantly with a dialectic between detail and scale. And the detail is more about wandering around in a context and being open to it. And that Nick and I are very good at. So we would, you know, in some cases, like when we were in China, we had a massive crew because we had these remote helicopter guys with us, and translators and fixers and stuff. And so we would just sneak off with a translator and try to find these little stories while Ed was organizing the big view. And that worked really well together. And you know, sometimes it shifted, and we would be doing different things. We did a lot of helicopter shooting, and so sometimes Nick would be with Ed up in the helicopter, sometimes I would be. But so there was a fluidity to a certain extent, but I would say that mainly that's how things worked out for us as co-directing in terms of shooting.
Thanks, Jennifer.
Yeah, great. Okay. I wonder if Ed's coming tomorrow too. Ed's coming